The persistent drizzle plastered dead leaves against the basement window, each one a tiny brown hand begging for entry. It was 7:15 a.m., and my Tchaikovsky routine, cleaning the Leica, Russian composers, the smell of developing chemicals clinging faintly to the air, was interrupted by the crunch of tires on the gravel drive. Unexpected. I taught Leo, my sister's boy, the basics of ham radio right here, amidst the hulking transmitters and coils of wire. Showed him how to listen to the world, how to reach out. He hadn't visited in over a year. Now, unannounced, on a Tuesday soaked in November gloom. My gut, honed by 35 years in shadows and whispers, tightened. The knuckles cracking, that sharp percussive sound he always made when he was lying or cornered, reached me even through the thick concrete. "Uncle Arthur, you home?" His voice, a shade too loud, too casual. I emerged from behind the Zenith receiver, wiping my hands on a faded chamois cloth. He stood framed in the doorway, his expensive-looking jacket already speckled with rain, eyes darting, not at me, but at the stacked equipment cases along the far wall. "Leo, to what do I owe the pleasure?" I kept my voice neutral, a practiced calm that had once navigated Eastern Bloc defection routes. He offered a strained smile. "Just checking in. Heard you weren't feeling well." He took a step inside, his gaze snagging on a particular case, the one marked Marconi. It wasn't the words that bothered me. It was the way his pupils dilated, a fleeting micro-expression of grim satisfaction. I remembered interrogating a GRU agent in Budapest. He'd done the same when he thought he'd secured the asset. This nephew of mine wasn't securing an asset. He was setting a trap. And he just walked right into the middle of it.
Leo didn't stay long. He made some vague excuses about needing to meet someone, his hand already fiddling with his keys, cracking knuckles with nervous urgency. I watched from the porch as his beat-up sedan spun gravel, disappearing down the long, muddy drive. The moment the engine sound faded, the quiet returned, heavier now, pregnant with foreboding. The basement door creaked shut behind me. I walked directly to the Marconi case. It was heavier than I remembered. Inside, beneath the dusty reel-to-reel tapes and coiled antenna wire, was a false bottom. My fingers, still steady despite the 68 years that had etched lines onto them, worked the seam. Beneath it lay the reason for Leo's visit. 3 sealed bricks of what looked like $100 bills, wrapped tight in plastic. Beside them, a manila envelope stuffed with photocopied invoices for shell companies I'd never heard of, Cyberdyne Solutions, Omega Imports, Veritas Logistics, standard money laundering fare, and a USB drive, its casing slightly scuffed. My breath hitched, not in fear, but in cold, dawning anger. This wasn't just about getting money for his gambling debts. This was a frame, a deliberate attempt to pin a federal crime on me. The invoices were dated over the last 6 months, conveniently coinciding with the period after Eleanor passed, when I'd been adrift. He'd known I'd be distracted. He'd seen my grief as an opportunity. The rage was a familiar heat, one I hadn't felt since the late 80s, chasing down a rogue informant in Prague. But this was worse. This was family. My sister's son. He wanted me to rot in federal prison so he could cash in on whatever insurance or estate trickery he'd concocted. I picked up the USB drive. Its surface felt smooth, insignificant, yet it held my future. Or the end of it. Eleanor's face swam before my eyes, her quiet strength, her unwavering belief in me, even after I'd left the agency for less dangerous work. She'd hated lies.
And Leo had just spun the biggest one of his life, right in my own home. Well, Leo, you forgot one crucial detail. I built careers on spotting these kinds of setups, and my retirement wasn't going to be spent in a federal penitentiary. The police would be here within the hour. Leo would call them, play the concerned nephew who'd stumbled upon evidence of his uncle's illicit dealings. Standard playbook. But Leo's version of the playbook was cribbed from cheap thrillers, not reality. My years at Langley taught me that information is fluid and possession is temporary. I slipped on a pair of nitrile gloves, a habit from the darkroom days, still useful for avoiding contamination. First, the cash, real, untraceable currency, destined for a loan shark. I took 2 of the bricks, leaving one behind as evidence. I carefully resealed the false bottom, ensuring no new fingerprints marred the surface. Then, the USB. The encryption looked professional, but no system is foolproof. Back in my study, the Leica sat on its usual cloth. I pushed it aside, accessing my old secure workstation, a relic I kept for personal archival. It took 10 minutes of focused work, bypassing the consumer-grade encryption Leo's tech guy or whoever's had used. The files were exactly as I suspected: rigged ledgers, doctored bank statements, receipts for non-existent goods funneled through the shell companies, proof of Leo's money laundering operation. But this wasn't evidence against me, it was evidence of his guilt. I copied the relevant files onto a secure, encrypted drive of my own. Then I scrubbed the original drive clean, making it look like a failed data transfer. Operation Nightingale, I thought, the name flashing in my mind from a delicate extraction in East Berlin. We had to get the asset out before the Stasi arrived. My job was to create the diversion. Now I was creating my own.
I carefully placed Leo's USB drive into an empty Ziploc bag, labeling it in my neat script, "Potential Evidence, Arthur Penhaligon, for Police." I placed this bag not in the Marconi case, but in the pocket of the old tweed jacket hanging by the basement door, the one Leo had brushed against entering. He'd been careless. He'd touched it. I wiped down the Marconi case and its contents thoroughly. The single brick of cash I left would be enough to make the initial report credible. The rest of the money, and the drive, needed to go where Leo would never expect. I drove my old pickup truck, the suspension groaning in the mud, to the dilapidated fishing shed by the creek. Inside, amongst the lures and rusty tackle boxes, was another false bottom. I buried the 2 bricks of cash there. If Leo was smart, he'd come back for it. If he wasn't, it would wait. My personal archival workstation was wiped. The real evidence was secured. The stage was set.
The flashing blue and red lights reflecting off the rain-slicked windows were the only signal I needed. 2 uniformed officers and a plain-clothed detective, Detective Miller, based on the hesitant way the uniforms deferred to him, stood on my porch. Leo was already there, standing a little too close to the detective, his face a mask of carefully constructed concern. "Detective," Leo began, his voice tight. "I found this. I was worried. My uncle, he's been acting strangely since my aunt passed." He gestured vaguely towards the basement. Miller, a man whose weary eyes had seen too much in this quiet county, nodded curtly. "Mr. Penhaligon, we had a report of possible illicit activity. May we come in?" I stepped aside, my movements slow, deliberate. "Of course, Detective. You're welcome to search anywhere. I have nothing to hide." Leo's eyes flickered towards the basement door, a spark of triumph igniting. He knew the setup. He'd planted it there. He expected them to find it. We descended the stairs, the smell of damp earth and old electronics thick in the air. Miller and his partner started systematically, opening drawers, checking corners. Leo hovered near the Marconi case, practically vibrating with anticipation. I watched him, a ghost of a smile playing on my lips. He thought he'd won. Miller moved towards the jacket hanging by the door. He paused, his gaze fixing on the Ziploc bag. He picked it up, his professional demeanor hardening. He turned it over, reading my neat label. Then he looked at Leo. "Potential evidence, Arthur Penhaligon. This is interesting."
Leo's confidence visibly deflated, replaced by a dawning confusion. "No, that's not it. It's in the case, the other case, the big one," he stammered, pointing a trembling finger towards the Marconi transmitter stack. Miller exchanged a look with his partner, a silent communication passing between them. The partner casually walked over to the stack, his hand brushing against the tweed jacket.
"Detective," he said, his voice low but clear. "Found something in the suspect's jacket pocket. Looks like undeclared cash and a USB drive." Leo let out a strangled gasp, his face contorted, the mask shattering. "You!" he spat, whirling on me, his knuckles cracking like pistol shots in the sudden silence. "You set me up! You knew!" I met his gaze, my expression unreadable. "You played a game, Leo," I said, my voice quiet, measured, devoid of malice. "But you never learned the rules." He stared, betrayal and panic warring in his eyes. He finally understood. The man who taught him to listen to the world had just made sure he'd never hear anything but the inside of a prison cell.
3 months later. The rain had stopped, replaced by the crisp air of early spring. My new apartment overlooked a small harbor in Maine, the salty tang a welcome change from damp earth. The Leica camera sat on a polished table, gleaming, but unused. My Russian composers played softly, Rachmaninoff this time, a touch melancholic but hopeful. Leo took a plea deal, 7 years. He'd cooperated, giving up his bookie, a man whose operation, it turned out, was far larger and more violent than anyone suspected. My evidence from the USB, combined with his testimony, had been persuasive. I never saw him after that day. I received one letter, forwarded through my lawyer. I didn't open it. Loyalty is a currency I value. Betrayal is a debt I collect. But forgiveness, that's earned, not given. The farmhouse was sold, the proceeds quietly divided amongst Eleanor's favorite charities. My sister, bless her naive heart, believed Leo's story about me having a breakdown. Sometimes, ignorance is its own form of protection. I'd spent my life in the service of a country that demanded silence and sacrifice, navigating a world where truth was a weapon and trust was a liability. Eleanor had been my anchor, my truth in a sea of deception. Losing her had almost broken me. But the danger Leo brought, the stark reminder of my own capabilities, had in a strange way resurrected something within me. A sense of purpose. A sharp awareness that even in quiet retirement, the skills honed in the shadows still held value. Justice, I reflected, isn't always about revenge. Sometimes it's about balance. It's about ensuring that those who prey on the vulnerable, who betray the trust placed in them, face the consequences. I finished my coffee, the robust flavor grounding me. The harbor was waking up, boats chugging out into the sunlight. I stood by the window, the vast expanse of the Atlantic before me. I was alone, yes, but I wasn't broken. I was simply quiet. And in that quiet, I found my peace.
Eleanor would have liked that. The sun warmed my face, a gentle promise of days ahead.